As always, it's great to see you again, Ryan.
Likewise, Ethan. I
Appreciate you.
hear, well, I think I saw a photo. You got a new camera, is that right?
I am so freaking excited about that. Yes. That is absolutely the first thing to get to and makes me feel a little less guilty about not having our camera situation fixed up because you can't film the thing you're using. So, ta-da!
Very nice.
That's my baby. Uh, so getting to that, this is the Sony A7S III. The major cornerstone of that is you make a lot of sacrifice on photo quality. I'm not a photographer. I'm a videographer. And this is really good at video.
Very
Actually got a
nice.
lens for once. It came like with nothing. So I had it, I'm like, yay. And then waiting hours for the lens to come in the mail so I'd actually have something that I could use it with for a bit.
I could see that being mildly frustrating having a new toy and not being able to play with it right out of the box.
So it's really, really good at video. Its speciality is low light, night stuff, which is
Okay.
which is my focus, what I really care about. I've noticed this gradually as a long time. When I bought my television a few years ago, the most important thing for me was there's all the trade-offs, but you would have incredibly good blacks. And that contrast, when I thought I would like it and I got it, I'm like, yes, this is actually what I care about. There's so many things that feel like it's almost 3D, like it looks like you could touch the frames because you have such like just darkness, it feels real.
Very nice.
So there will be a lot to get into that. We won't have enough time today, but the
Does that
big
mean you're
thing.
going to be going into some of those more dark, uh, I want to say brooding, but that's not quite the right emotion for those fun Nashville bars?
That is exactly it. Yeah.
All
There's so
right.
many things, but that I can start doing. That doesn't have to wait anymore. I can go to those hotel bars that I was talking about. I They have these nice dim, kind of introspective, peaceful moods, and this camera will just cut that up like, you know, a katana through wood. I'm
Perfect.
looking I'm looking forward to trying that out, but I'm already like nervous about breaking it or dropping it or anything. So
I'm sure you'll be fine.
it's a lot of the same feeling as when I had my drone, where it's so much outside my budget, and also it's the first one I have and the only one I have. So it's kind of like I want at least to have some time of getting a lot of material out of this and a lot of learning of it. If like I broke it the first day, that would suck.
Yeah,
But if after like a month or two, it's like, well, okay, well, I have a lot of material I can learn from editing now. It's like, I still have some value out of it.
absolutely.
But I appreciate you remembering that. I will get back to that later, and maybe have some stuff to show. And there's a ooh. Speaking of black, hey Wesley,
Yeah,
he's
he's
adorable.
decided that now is the perfect time to sit directly behind me
Mm.
between my back and the couch. So
Unbelievably, he has some
if
good
I just
teamwork.
start moving around, it's him walking back there.
So we'll get to the darkness thing and other stuff you can do with it. The main thing it's going to be doing for right now is for talking head stuff at home. That's going to be the primary need that I had. And that's the first thing I'm going to start working on.
Okay.
Which brings me to this blurring of the background that you can get with a physical lens that you can't really get with the super small flat ones that you
Right.
have on an iPhone. That's the main thing you lose. Like definitely a smaller sensor size. You don't get the darkness as well as you can. But the thing that you just completely lose is that, background blurring. They call it bokeh. It's a goofy, probably French word. You have to deal with that part. But I love it. Through all these courses I've gone through, I've noticed that that is the thing that I'm like excited about. The thing that in the advertisements made me feel like I like this and that I'm interested in it before they even
Okay.
start explaining it. And when I got into it, like there's a dozen things. This isn't such a big deal. Don't worry about it. You can do a lot with your iPhone. I'm like, this is the number one thing I care about, guys. So
Interesting.
having this physical lens, I can mess around with that a lot more. And when I have it in my hands and I can do it myself, you can actually start feeling like what do you get out of it, what works, and react emotionally to it. So in the past 3 days, I've had a pretty big crash course on this.
And I'm sorry, what did you say that was called?
Bokeh, I believe they spell it Bokeh.
Perfect, thank you. Just making a note of that because I'm going to bring that back up later.
There's a lot of things it connects to. The first thing is I think it's gorgeous. I think it looks really beautiful. It's strange because when I was reading about it conceptually from before, it seemed like a flaw that you'd want to have as much of the world in focus as possible. So actually spending money and effort to pull things out of focus, that makes no sense. But then I've been realizing as I went through these courses, not knowing why I like it, but feeling it, that's where your emotions start. And eventually it slowly connects to your brain over time and experience and realizing what about it you like and why. I realized that this is how we show thought. It shows what you're thinking about. If you have a screen or a scene and there's a ton of things there, you're thinking about all of them. They're all equally important. But when you're living your life, part of what's going on is your eyes, but also your ears, your smell, taste, your feeling, and your emotions. You're focusing on different things. There's that one great example of a TED Talk where the guy basically changes his clothes in the middle of the talk and no one notices because there's a thing that you only have so much time, so much processing power in your brain. You can't run all these senses at 100% and all the thinking you do. And if you can do something, and in this case, tell a story so interesting that people are so busy thinking about it, you stop noticing what your eyes are seeing.
Interesting.
So if you have a scene where, say, you're at a park in a city and a lot's going on, and there's one thing or one person, and then rapidly you get this bokeh effect and everything goes out of focus except that person, you emotionally feel it without anyone saying it, that suddenly this is so important that you stop thinking or noticing anything else in the world except that person. And it's a powerful feeling.
So it's capturing that emotional feel and putting that into your work.
Mm.
Very nice.
It's the most effective version of what we were talking about before about how extreme close-ups can actually get you a sensory feeling. Where if you show up like a real close-up to, um, some dumbbells, you're going to start thinking about the feeling of your hands touching it because there isn't enough visual space to really think about what's going on around it. If you do that with not just the frame around it being closed up, but the blurring make it so that the depth of field is so narrow that this is all you see. It makes you even more intensely just feel the sense associated with that thing instead of looking at it as an object to be seen.
That makes perfect sense. And my mind just went to, God, I can't remember what the movie is, but there's one part where it just zooms up almost on like a wall of bricks, and you can, I swear, feel the rough texture of the bricks because you see all the little pores in it, all the little jagged edges.
Yeah, it's wild, right? And that's kind of one of the most fun parts of all of this is going through. I don't know why I feel it, but now we're paying attention. We notice that we're feeling something. And after more experience, we start noticing why. And like, oh, I want to use that trick.
Absolutely. That is a fun inverse to that, where instead of focusing the camera on one thing, you're focusing, well, literally blurring out everything rather than cutting it out. So it's all still there, but you're still drawing the eye to that one moment, that one part of the frame.
Mm, mm.
I like
Because
that.
There's a whole lot we can get into this. I feel like this is going to be one of those things, like you were mentioning, the rule of threes, that we're going to come up to over and over again. So instead of
Oh
trying to
yes.
just figure it all out today, just wanted to bring that up. The interesting thing, just one more point on that, is turns out this is actually how your real eye actually works. The real center of it, you have a lot of high quality, photocells, and the rest of your eye isn't. So when you're looking at anything, the center, the thing you actually care about, is in focus, and everything around it is blurry. So this makes it feel even more natural, like you're in a life or death predatory situation. You would be looking at the thing that matters, and everything else would be blurred out. The thing we have in, modern photography, where you can actually see everything at once, that never happens in your eye ever.
No.
I've been working with this a little bit. Good Lord, it took me 3 days to figure out how to use the aperture on this thing. It's a fundamental thing and also really important for being able to control the bokeh. But just having this in my hands, being able to experience it, I realized something. I've been obsessed with 3D movies for a long time. I pushed really hard on that. Even people thought it was corny. When it was dying out, it's like, this was one of the best things. Don't take it away from me. I bought a 3D TV. I had glasses for it. Every single movie that would come out, I would watch at it. When I moved out here and the movers lost my 3D TV, I was so bummed because they
Uh,
don't make them anymore. I can't replace it. But working with this, it made me realize they're the same. The reason why I love 3D movies so much, it's the exact same reason why I like bokeh so much. It was a way that even without blurring things out, you could really have a focus on this is what's important here.
mm, they were controlling how much something jumped out and used that to shine that light rather than painting it out or making it blurry.
Even when things are in the center, the jump out, that was a thing that people complained about, where that people felt that was, well, we'll just say people weren't really enthusiastic about that. But after they got used to, like, they got that out of the system, there was so many powerful things that they could do with 3D that wasn't involved in something jumping out at you. The example I love to give is there's that movie, The Great Gatsby.
Right.
That old book, it's mostly just people sitting around talking for 300 pages of a book. And there's this scene where they're sitting at a table talking. And in 3D, it had so much more emotional impact. Even as a
Really?
fan, I was surprised that would happen.
Can you describe where like the 3D was making an impact on it? What made it have more emotion?
Two parts to it. One, just like the bokeh being more like how your real eye actually works. So it's, the 3D changed it from feeling I'm looking at a painting with pictures of people inside talking about it to feeling like this is a real world. This is a real room I'm sitting in. And the stuff they're talking around, it feels like these are real people and this is really emotionally intense now. It didn't feel like you're looking at actors who are going to go home to rich families. It felt like you're sitting in a room with these people having this real difficult discussion.
Interesting.
And like that focus, not jumping out at you, having these people at a table in the center, the 3D, you actually, like bokeh, you can control how much room there is for that. So you could have the things in the background really feel like they're super distant. They're there. And in this case, they're in focus, but they really feel far away and not what you're looking at. And the stuff up close, it makes it have a more of a beautiful, you know, roomy feel. But they're also like, yeah, that
It
crap's
adds
not.
a sense of depth to it.
Yeah, the
Okay.
center feels very central.
Interesting.
So I'm looking forward to talking about it later after I've had more time to try it out, learn about it. Yeah, we all have a whole lot of things in the fire right now.
Oh, there is no shortage of good topics for us.
Hmm. I will tell you, it is such a mental relief to have it. It like other people like going through their journey through this. Um, I know it's really important to not buy things more expensive than you need and not buy things before you need it.
Right.
At the same time, like I just was spending so much time researching this and trying to find a compromise that was less expensive, that would be more appropriate for what I'm doing now to make myself happy. And after I bought it, just the 3 days of having zero time, and maybe more importantly, zero brain space and emotional space spent on looking up alternatives. Oh, it feels good.
Glad to hear it. And seems like it was a worthwhile investment then.
Yeah. Like hopefully I'll have something worthwhile to show you soon. I
I'm
wanted to
sure you
contrast
will.
this before against the mobile gimbals. I believe we talked about those before, right?
Yes. Was that just last time we talked about that?
Yeah. It's like that's something where it's definitely a lot more affordable, and it's a good, but it's also a waste because eventually you're not going to be needing a mobile like camera. You're going to be doing on like one of these kind of cameras, but it's such a good learning tool. And I was thinking about that, and they both are probably going to be worth their weight in gold in how much quicker you like learn, develop your enjoyment, and kind of just get where do you want to be.
That makes perfect sense. I like that.
The like 2 months ago, remember the computer I put together?
Yes. I remember it didn't quite have a full case yet and was under your TV, but I do remember that.
Probably never will at this rate. But the amount of time I spent like agonizing and trying to like lower costs on that, and like that cost a fraction of what this thing cost. It so if it's for yourself, we skimp so crazy, and I don't know if that's the right way to be making decisions. This has a feeling that it's going to be creating stuff that other people enjoy and might actually return some sort of financial benefit in the future. But it's so weird how skewed we are to not just, I'm going to enjoy this so much that should be the top priority.
Again, diminishing returns, return on investment. This is my business school background coming out to play again, but if I look at something and go, okay, this cost me, I don't know, let's say 20 hours of work. That's a considerable amount of time. But at the same time, if over the next month or two it's going to save me 40 hours a full week's worth of work, yeah, it makes sense. I'll get it.
I guess it's a no-brainer because it's giving you more. There's no way that's a loss at all. But there's
At the
this
same time, if it's how quickly do you want it to pay for itself in my mind. I One of the best things that I started doing was thinking about things not in worth of their dollars, like, oh, this is a $40, $50 bottle. It's think of it as how much time did it take you to earn that much? Is it worth 3 hours of your time? Is it worth 10 hours of your time?
that is a much stronger way to look at things.
If something costs you 20 hours of your time, but it will save you 20 hours of time over the next 2 months, okay, something I'm interested in. If it costs me 2 weeks worth, 80 hours, and it's only going to make about half an hour a difference every week, maybe I can hold off on that one for a while.
It's still an exchange where there has to be some payoff, and time is the part of this that I'm really, really interested. I I've said this before, but we're so focused on the past and the future, and I kind of feel where we miss out is that we're never taught for our own happiness, which exists only in the present.
That's true too.
and to have some things like this won't pay off in any other time. The only time this will pay off is now. But if you never do that, then you never enjoy your life at all, ever.
That's true, but at the same time, I do some things where I really enjoy it in the moment, and then I'm gonna remember and enjoy those memories for the rest of my life, hopefully.
That's another huge thing. I've been feeling that more lately myself, where even if you were just going to go this hard exchange decision, having it sooner in life gives you longer to be remembering it and enjoying it. If you save everything for the last, year of your life, you don't get to spend, 60 years remembering it, having that joy, the memory over and over.
Very interesting way of looking at things. I like that.
Hmm. Okay, so two quick things before we get on to the big, course and business update.
Yes.
I think you would like this. I like this. Today, I was listening to a podcast, Modern Wisdom, and the guest was this guy named Shaan Puri.
Okay.
And not a lot of deep insight to get into it until I finished the episode. But his whole premise was that hard work is not the most important part of success. I go, what is it then? It's like two things. Guess what they were?
I'm gonna say efficient working, because you can work hard and go nowhere if you aren't using that time and effort efficiently. And then I'm gonna say like passion, something like that to keep you going, help set you apart.
Yeah. His his conclusion was that the two things are enthusiasm
In line with passion, I'll take that.
and storytelling.
Okay.
And that's pretty much everything my life revolves around.
I like both of those answers. I can do good with that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he's right. It kind of feels like a lot of good things are naturally clicking together the more we've gotten into this path.
I am inclined to agree, my friend.
Like, God, like, when I put these episode plans together, like, I love how good and right it feels. All of these pieces, they feel like they have this gravity connecting to together themselves. It almost feels like going on a ride instead of this labor of building something. I can't wait until I'm good enough at it to actually be able to explain it, to be able to talk about it on one of these episodes.
I think you've gotten pretty good at it. These episodes have a good feel to them, at least from my perspective. Seems like they do from you. Hopefully, watching back, they feel more structured and good too.
I'm definitely getting more. The work to joy ratio is increasing.
That's fantastic.
I think this concept is something that can transfer over to other things. So I'm going to think about it, and eventually, when I have time, I want to focus on this and talk about how we could teach this to other people and how we can transfer this over to other types of things that we're doing. So the last thing I want to get to before we get to the main part, I'm pretty excited about this. It's short, but man, it made me feel so rewarded for all the work we put in. I always watch movies drunk. They're beautiful, but they keep getting dumber and dumber and more predictable.
Yeah,
Practically
agreed.
by the time I was 26, it's like, oh, what's the point of watching these? Because I know what's going to happen. Everything's so predictable. But if you get drunk enough, like at least you're having fun, and you kind of don't. You get surprised a little bit because you're not as smart as you normally are. But lately, I've been watching movies sober, and if you pick the right ones, it's actually been more enjoyable than I expected. As I've been getting more into the filmography and discussing storytelling with you, there's a lot more for me to look for, and I get a lot more out of it. Last night, I went and saw Gran Turismo.
Okay, how is that?
Pretty good movie. We can get to that another time. But when I walked out of it, and you walk into the theater lobby, and there are these beautiful places, they have cool, laser lightings all over the place. It's an interesting place to be. I was hit with this feeling of like, oh fuck, am I drunk? This is just this overwhelming feeling of this is so gorgeous, and I'm looking at all the lights like crazy, and it had these like flashbacks of like this is how I feel every single time I walk out of a movie completely drunk off Jack Daniels. I'm like, I'm dumb. I'm glad I got a ride home, and everything is so pretty. I'm like, freaking Ryan, all the work we're doing on this stuff and all the stuff I've been studying from the past couple months on, videography and how this stuff works has got to the point where the natural stuff, just completely sober, looks as beautiful to me as it did when I was drunk.
I'm glad to hear that you don't need to be drunk to find beauty in the world anymore.
It's impressive that it was able to enhance it that much, and it's just this is how it always is now. So that's rewarding. I'm glad to have invested in this.
I will say, I think modern films, for the most part, there's a couple of the recent ones even that came out where they rushed production or the editors and the production value suffered because of it. But they're putting so much money into movies now. The production value has never been better,
Mm.
even if the writing is predictable and not the best, which, like you, I can see what's coming about 20 minutes before it actually does. The Chekhov's guns aren't exactly hidden,
Mm.
but the production, the camera work, all of that, I don't think has been better, other than in a few cases where they're having to do clever things with scale. And
Mm.
I can talk about some old Charlie Chaplin clips that are just mind-boggling how they pulled it off, but completely inefficient by today's standards.
And that's definitely a like completely true. In this case, wasn't the movie. It was like I'm walking out just in the lobby. So that's the same lobby it's been for the entire time I've lived out here. But you're completely right about how things are getting better on the visual craft of movies lately. There's one thing I watched this past week. Yeah, it's new since we last talked. Got turned on. I've been watching through some of those Critical Drinker episodes, and he talked about this show on Netflix called One Piece. He made a pretty good, convincing argument for it, and I watched a couple episodes of it. It's based on a Japanese anime. It's a live action version of it, which is always kind of challenging to do. Uh, and in that, I don't really know much to say about the story. That's not knocking my socks off too much. Otherwise, I would have read it in the original Japanese when I lived out there.
Sure.
But my God, Ryan, it's like the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen on a screen in my entire life. It's ridiculous.
Really?
Like the whole metric people usually say is how often do you look at your phone while you're watching a show? Like I can't blink. It I've been sitting here with this idea, and I've told you I have those little radiographs of people's skills, and there's one of them is like videography skills and camera movements and stuff like that, and they go from
Right.
1 to 5 stars. And watching this, I was like, fuck, like we have to add 2 more stars to the scale. This is at least 2 levels better
That
than anything
impressive.
I've ever seen in a movie.
Goodness, I'm gonna have to watch a little bit of that now and see what it is that you're talking about there. That sounds almost too good to be true.
Yeah, I'd love to get a second doctor's opinion. It's the camera movements for me are what get it. It's not so much like Michael Bay or Avatar where you just have really beautiful special effects. And the new Avatar movie, it was beautiful to look at. I enjoyed that part of it. But this, every single step, every single movement has just, it feels like they spent an entire lifetime just planning each one out. So there's a ton of stuff going on. So everything you're feeling, just wow, that's cool. That looks pretty. Oh, that's going over there. And I don't know how to put it into words. It's just there's so much happening, but not in an overwhelming way. It's this natural connecting, but nothing feels. There's nothing missing. There's no empty space that's just dead. No dead space, but there's
Okay.
not space. No dead movement. Movement's constantly filled the entire time.
So the movements, it's never just like a one steady camera, or just not for the moments that are trying to have more impact, more energy put into them. They're doing a lot more dynamic camera work, it sounds like.
Yeah. Uh, it'll be fun to talk about after we have some. Maybe we can even like get some examples and look at some together after we both analyze it on our own. But uh, yeah, a constant onslaught of movement would make you numb, and that would be bad too.
That's
Uh,
true.
so there definitely is like the crescendo of movement, and then the decrescendo of movement. But when they are just sitting, like the whole conversation, please, that needs to be quiet. You need to be focusing on the words you're saying. But there'll still be so much beautiful stuff arranged in the scene, and there'll be like a slight, amount of movement, but in a way that fits. So, it the best way I can put this in emotional terms is it feels like you were riding a freaking dragon, and the dragon flies and it goes crazy, and then it comes down for a nap, and it's napping, and it's sleeping, and it's quiet, but you're sitting on a fucking sleeping dragon. And that's the feel you have when you're watching those talking scenes.
Okay. Interesting. I will definitely check that one out then.
Yeah. More things we can branch into. There's more ideas in this than we have time to, but I'd like to get into some of that analysis as we go on.
Absolutely.
So moving on to the content creator course and all the business stuff I've learned from that. I'm very excited. I've powered through enough that I feel like I've gotten to the part where I've learned how to learn. I can see where this is going, have a good idea of how much time it's going to take. So can start carving out time for other things. So we could start maybe adding more segments into this podcast as you find interesting. And I can start actually planning out what things I can fit into my schedule. So I'll be able to resume working on the presenting skills and some other things as well, because I finally know enough to know how long this is going to take me.
Okay.
The interesting thing is so much of this is science, like real science. When you're working in science, they have a couple different divisions of it. How are you familiar with the difference between abstract science and applied science?
Uh, I know I was at one point. I believe I still know the difference, but I'm likely a little foggy on it.
So then to recap, applied science is when people are just, there's something that could be true. We're just going to go explore and find out what it is. We have no idea what it could be used for. We don't even know if it ever could be used for anything. We're just looking at it. We got into a lot of that stuff with Oppenheimer, where before that generation happened, there was plenty of generations of people studying physics. Where like, well, this could be happening in a black hole. Like, is it true? Don't know. Would we ever go there? Definitely not. Is there any way we could use this? Hell no. Don't care. But then decades later, when we got
Exploring
to
the
a
theory
situation,
of it.
yes, theory. That's a much better word. All pure theory. But then sometimes it eventually builds enough that we get to a point where we need to do something. And this is a path where it's such a big leap that we would never have taken the path to get there because it would have taken too long. But now that these guys have done enough applied, like theoretical research, abstract research, we're close enough that there's some applied science we need, like making a giant fucking bomb. That the applied scientists see, we're close enough that we could take this and turn it into something that would actually be used in the real world. A lot of this business, this content creation, it's applied science. It's so much of, what do we want to get to? Well, we want that. Well, how do we get there? Well, we need to understand how all this works. Do we know? No. Then we better start doing research. The core of what I'm getting in right now is the market research. And that's kind of the most important part of this. And I think that applies to a lot of what we're going to want to do together as well. So I'd love to talk about the other things as time goes on in future episodes, but I think the market research is the most important one. So that's what I want to talk about today. The hardest part of this was learning how to do it. because I understand these concepts. I worked in science for a long time. I could handle it on my own, but I don't know how do you get data on how people feel about whiskey? I have no clue. And they never talked about whiskey, but they talked about this concept enough that I got the hint of how you do it. For this case, where we're doing, making a product that we're going to try to sell a large number of people, the first step is learning how to contact large numbers of people interested in that. And they gave some great examples. Going on Facebook or message boards or any kind of online social groups and just join it and look at what those people talk about, see what they say. It was a stumbling block for me because I'm like, well, you need to have a big audience of followers that you've created because you're this really famous, podcaster or YouTuber. How do you do it without having those people first? You need to have 20,000 emails on a distribution list that people sign up for you. You can just go to these existing places, and you're not the leader. You are just somebody watching them talk about the life they live. You can start to ask them questions. And as you go in there, you can go out to other places. Like you could find somebody who's even doing what you want to do. All right, join their group. See what their people are doing. Ask their followers, the questions that you want the answers to.
I mean, that makes sense to me. First thing you need to do is find out what their needs are, what their wants are, what they don't want in whatever product or service you're trying to create. And the internet's been around long enough now to where if it's out there, there's going to be a group of people online who like to talk about it already.
Yeah. Like the question to ask I felt very comfortable with. Like the goal I'm going for I felt comfortable with, but like how to get those questions answered. I guess it would have been obvious to you. I should just ask you first.
No, I would not have guessed that. I would have said just go out, start talking with people. I wouldn't have had the idea of going to existing discussions on the internet. That's much more time efficient and focused than what I would have done.
As I say in science, you want to have a large sample size. So
yes,
trying to, I don't want to be cold efficient, but, trying to get so it's not just a regional, unique thing to people who happen to hang out with Ethan. I want to tell you a little bit about what I saw from my first initial pass. I just barely got done with my studies of the program that I can start doing this. So I've had maybe half a day of actually doing research. But starting to talk to people in person and I know online or whatever, man, I love this idea. I love the whiskey culture so much. Everybody's so enthusiastic. That's just a guarantee of everything. No one goes up like, well, I guess you want to sell me something, or I don't know if it would work. It was like, oh, I love things about this. Let's talk about it.
absolutely. Whiskey is one of those things where there isn't really people who are just like, eh. If there are those people, they go in, buy a $20 bottle of Four Roses, and then leave the liquor store, and that's their extent of whiskey. That's their full experience.
There's a lot of emotion, and it's positive emotion. One of the examples I gave, which I think is a very useful one, they're talking about a very niche part of weight loss. And it's so niche that you have to really wrap your brain around learning it. So if you can learn that, you can be pretty solid. And people are enthusiastic. They want to talk about it, but it's this really, unpleasant, kind of mournful, because it's about, I don't like this, and I'm going to do something painful to try to get to some place that I dislike less. And whiskey, we're like, yay, more.
Yeah, no, it's a very easy to be gluttonous field.
That's actually one of the first. I'm keeping notes of the things I'm figuring out, and I think this is going to take me a lot longer to complete research than I thought it would. But one of them was there's this massive difference between over drinking, the rah, 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 drinking. Yeah, that's more younger, low income, And the people I talk to, they have a high amount of enthusiasm. I don't think they probably get, that smashed, that hungover, and they're probably not like, sleeping with their friend's girl, or punching holes through walls. There's an enthusiasm, but it's definitely a different feel. Everyone
Quality over
looks like they could be
quantity.
a sea captain or a CEO. I like this.
One of the best things that was explained to me early on was for most people, as you get older, it's a genuine increase of you stop drinking quantity as much, but you start drinking more quality.
The quality of what you drink, yes. And I think maybe what you're also getting at is the quality of the experience. I think the amount of joy that these people are getting out of, 2 shots of whiskey is way more than we were getting it. I mean, you're like kind of a savant at this crap, so I don't want to. Most people, when they're 20s, you know.
I'm a weird case.
Yes, you are, Ryan.
I fully admit and embrace that.
I'm gonna have to subtly like drop hints about like, working on nuclear bombs to like remind people my time isn't wasted. I know something that Ryan doesn't. Although no one really gives
You
a shit about
know
that stuff.
quite a bit that I don't, and I'm very grateful that my lifestyle somehow ended up resulting in me stumbling into getting paid to drink whiskey and be a modern philosopher while I do so.
Yeah, man. It's the kind of like you figure out the why pretty fast. So the stuff that you're learning and interested in knowing is way more important than the stuff that most people are pursuing at any age. It's great.
I have two things that I always try and learn about anything that someone tells me. Why is that happening? Why is that? And what is the logical conclusion if I took this to its extreme?
And that can give you some pretty telling ideas about where you'd want to go, where you wouldn't want to go.
It's always interesting.
So, along with that, went on to, let's see if I can find it. I went into the first bit of, I talked with some people. I even talked with my boss, and he's really enthusiastic. He had a lot of good ideas. He's a big Scotch fan. And that
Hmm.
was just a fun conversation, but also was great, to learn from that discussion. And I do think that's a good foundation of knowing, talking about someone one on one, and that'll give you the ideas of how to ask better questions and go to the right types of groups that you might not have expected that you needed to talk to when you go to a larger scale. But then the next part, which I dipped my toe in a little bit, was looking at the existing businesses already out there offering whiskey tasting services. Things that would be both my competitors and the people I would emulate. The first thing I realized, I may have to buy clothes.
Have what?
I may have to buy new clothes.
Need to look a little more presentable for it.
the
Dress up for the occasion.
the taste is a lot, the knowledge is a lot. I think the stories are going to be a huge deal, but the presentation and the mood you create around it, I think is a really big deal. I want
So,
to send you
one
one
of,
photo.
okay, while you're sending me that, one of the things that I try and do is I realized a lot of the people that were coming into the bar and who drink whiskey as much as I do tend to be older than me because, again, I'm a weird case.
Hmm.
So I try and dress like they did when they were closer to my age, maybe even a little younger. So that way I make them feel young like they can drink more. And I'll be damned if it didn't work.
That's a wild idea.
Oh God. I see the picture you sent me. I swear I might know this man.
He would shock me if you didn't, Ryan.
What is his name?
I could honestly just skip my research and just hang out with you for a couple of weeks, and I'd probably learn everything I need to know about everyone who's ever wanted to drink whiskey.
I want to say it's Eric, but I know I'm thinking Eric Waite, and that's not him.
I don't remember his name. I do remember his nickname, which is another lesson. Nicknames are a brilliant idea because they're way more memorable. He goes by Pops.
Okay. I can't think of who he is right now, but
Definitely want to talk about that more in future episodes. I just wanted to like show you the presentation you get put together there, the visual stuff. Look at all the things you see there.
it looks fantastic. I mean, I love him in the vest there is always a good look.
Mm.
The lapel pin looks very sharp. Honestly, I love the glassware he's using too.
Yeah, he had a little shelf to raise up so that the other glasses were a lot more visible. That was impressive. I felt that too.
Very interesting. Great little setup he's got there. That is fantastic. I want to try and find a picture of Eric Waite so that way I can show you that I'm not crazy. And I swear this man looks just close enough to where, since I was drinking every time I've been with Eric,
I'm going to be spending an hour each day now going through online things like this or trying to talk to people in groups. So eventually I will be running to people you know. And, I'll send you little links. It'll be fun to get your thoughts on the person, but also what are the best parts of it? The essence of the tasting that I'm trying to make is I'm just taking the best parts of every distillery I went to and combining them together. So we can do that with what they're doing
absolutely.
too.
I will say Eric is very good. He'd be a great person for you. He's got a YouTube channel so you can look at, see how he does tasting reviews and everything.
Mm.
That being said, I wouldn't necessarily emulate him. He was a wine sommelier before he became a whiskey sommelier and still has that uh, air of pretentiousness about him
Mm.
that you get with wine more than whiskey.
Yeah.
I love him. He's definitely earned it. I mean, he's a wine sommelier and a whiskey sommelier. Complete respect there. He's done enough work to where he can deserve to be pretentious. It's not
Mm.
something I would choose to emulate.
It's good to know. The whole goal of this is to learn all these things and try and find some variation on it that is unique to me that people aren't already doing. So I'd actually be, instead of trying to take away from someone else's business, I'd be adding something new that people can enjoy.
Absolutely. I would honestly be hoping rather than seeing these other people as competition, seeing them as future collaborators or
Mhm.
even potential have them hire you on to keep doing this, just working for them now.
These are all very true things. At the end of the day, I want to feel proud that I added something to the community. So, that's going through this. One of the big things that hit that kind of brings it back to the whole business angle. There's so much of this stuff that you think about the idea and you don't know what it's really like until you do it. Like when I had this camera in my hands and I was actually using it. There's a lot of extra that you could only have through the experience of it. And doing this research to find market fit, it's so much more powerful and personal than I imagined. Like the whole idea is that this is this cold, ruthless, manipulative act to just try to find a way to, make money. And the more I'm getting to like this, business entrepreneurial thing, it's a very personal experience. The very core of what this is doing is I have to shut up, be humble, realize I don't know other people as well as I know myself, be curious and listen and enjoy the process of like what are you excited about? I want to know and I want to share what you're excited about. It's one of the most, warm and humane things that I've done in a while.
That's that is fantastic. I like looking at it as more of a gift for someone else rather than a gift for yourself of what would make it more special to this person.
Hmm. So I definitely wanted to bring this up for the first episode talking about the business side of things because I think this would be useful for your podcast. For me, it's more about understanding, how I could, what I should make so that they would like it. But for you, this is also could apply a lot for, finding audiences to announce your stuff to. You might learn a little bit of like, other ideas that you want to invest in or how you would make some modifications. But maybe more importantly than all of that is you have that spirit of really liking sharing people's enthusiasm. So I think this, could help you be even more you.
I'm gonna definitely start probably participating in a few more online discussions now and trying to put some of that into practice.
Hmm. So this is a topic we can keep sharing, discussing as we go on.
Yes.
So wrapping that up, I'm so grateful to have this all in a bucket that I know what needs to be done so I can start actually taking time for myself now. It's been a race to just I'm blind. I don't know how far the edge of the forest is, so I just got to run until at least I have an idea of knowing how long I need to take. And now I'm actually starting to spend time to enjoy art, filmography, and storytelling. It it builds appreciation for it. It develops your taste. There's so much that I've learned that I wouldn't learn from any class by just watching more movies this past week. But like coming back to the main thing, just like enjoying it. That's the real reason we're living our lives, man. It's been nice to get back to that.
Absolutely. I will drink to that.
It's funny how like my solution for burnout of trying to get ready for this is just watching other things which are still teaching me stuff. So
I
wrapping
mean,
up
it's
this,
a little bit of diversifying, still being productive, but you don't necessarily need to see one thing through to the next to the next. You can
hmm,
jump around three or four projects.
it kind of feels like the abstract science thing, where you're doing it just because you want to know, and sure you're learning a lot, but it's kind of for you for a little while.
I like that.
I think one of our earlier episodes, I was telling you how that one guy he mentioned his solution for burnout is to just keep going, but pick something in your wheelhouse, in your work domain, and do it just purely for yourself. So you're enjoying it even while you're making progress. And that'll kind of restore you. So wrapping this up a little bit, now I will have time, and I'd like to have this like have a regular segment each episode about presenting. I'm going to be able to develop time on that skill again. So there was one thing I did notice through my classes about presenting that I wanted to bring up. And it's also really
Okay.
awesome. Just having this stuff put in your head makes you learn while you're doing other things. So there's one guy in the crew. His name's Dan. He's very intense. He's sort of their salesman. He also is the guy who does the high level mentoring, which is a very expensive premium thing that, after you've already have your business going well and you would need to know a lot before you even benefit from his knowledge. But the way he talks, very intense. It's great. But he constantly talks fast. Just and there was one line he said that hit me so hard of, oh fuck, this is great. And he was going along, he just said, if LeBron James has a coach, why wouldn't you get a coach too? And my brain hit, like, this is one of the most powerful things I've heard all day. And he just ran on to the next thing. Before you could think about it, before you could feel it, before you could fully process all the full implications of that statement. And it was, oh wow, I remember this. This was like literally the first lesson at the stage academy that I'm trying to reserve time for, of having the variation of the rate of speech. So when you get to the really important stuff, you stop.
We let it sink in. Speak slowly and clearly on that.
Yeah, it was such a stark example. Like, okay, this is teaching me more even watching this guy. I'm like, but also I'm looking forward to how much power and value we're going to get out of it when we have these skills. The podcast I was mentioning you earlier, he actually said another line that made a lot of sense where he said, storytelling is so powerful, but we don't teach it anywhere because no one really realizes it's valuable.
No,
And
it's the best kept secret.
That's the way to put it. It's a tragedy that no one learns it. I wish I had been taught it younger. I hate how much my life was wasted without it. At the same time, with the way he put it, if you even get mediocre at it, you will stride across the world just destroying everything because that was like puts you so far above everybody. It's such a massively unfair advantage if you get any ability at storytelling skill.
I've been offered a job at every single job interview I've ever managed to get. I don't necessarily get an interview every time. I don't have the same appeal on paper. But anytime I go to a job interview and can talk to them and tell stories, I've been offered a job.
Hmm.
Because people recognize that and remember that. Even if they don't know exactly what it is, that will make you stand out.
It's almost even better if they don't know. They're like, I know this guy's good for something, and I can't figure out what, so I have to have it. Okay, if you're ready,
I'm ready and waiting.
I am semi-ready for my story time.
Should have made popcorn.
So I'm going to tell you, first of all, learned a lot through doing this. I've actually am convinced now that the plan was to do just raw, then do it with a start, middle, and an end, and then we do it a third time where you actually have it scripted out. I'm convinced now that we're going to need to do the start, middle, and end in a couple parts. I think there's more to get out of this before we advance to the next level. So this might just be me consoling myself because I know this is not nearly as good as it could be, but I would love to do this, get feedback, and then just do this exact same process and do it better in 2 weeks.
Okay. Can do a couple editing passes.
All right. So
Hey, Wesley, leave the computer. Sorry.
I got my notes out here, and they're just notes about what my start, middle, and ends are.
Sorry, the dog is half falling, half rolling off the couch.
He's gonna steal the show, and I love him for it. Hey, buddy. I think he
That
likes
is his
you.
ass just across my lap, and the front of him is just laying on the ground. Completely just, his spine is a pool noodle. I don't know how he does this. Okay. Sorry about that.
All right, let's give this a try.
Yes, please.
So I want to tell you a story about a story. It's such a good story that it teaches us something about stories themselves. And in many ways, if you notice, it's also a Superman story. It's the story of the Donut Lord. The premise of this movie, and I saw it, it's a kid's movie. There's a small town out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a sheriff, and he works in this town. He doesn't feel like he really adds anything. It's a quiet town. He doesn't really do much there. They don't really need any help. There's nothing to save him from. And he likes his town, but, it's just and he's happy, but he feels like there could be more. He doesn't really tell people about it, but he dreams of actually doing massive dangerous stuff. He wants to save lives, to just go to the whole end of the line, be the most important version of what a cop could be. But he's not sad. And at the same time, at the start of this movie, the whole premise of all of this is there's this alien, and he's crashed there, and he's hiding out. He knows that if anyone sees him, it's going to not just freak people out, but it's going to lead to, governments and scientists and dissections and a lot of bad stuff he wants to avoid. So he's just hanging out. But there's nothing else to do, so he just watches the people. And his favorite person to watch is this sheriff. And he can't talk with them, so he doesn't know a whole lot about what they do. But he sees that guy is respected. Everyone loves him. Everyone cares about him. And everybody just gives him these gifts of donuts. And he eats them all like a merciless Tyrannosaurus. He gives everyone a nickname, and the nickname he gives to this guy is, cute, silly, the Donut Lord. Then, after a couple, 15, 20 minutes into the story, the government does find out about the alien, and they show up, and they start looking for him. Soon, the alien runs to this guy for help, because he doesn't know no one else to talk to. The guy freaks out, whatever, moves on. His instinct is just to help somebody. So they get in his car, they start driving away. And for plot reasons, if they can just get to San Francisco, there's a way to, get this guy back home. They do this road trip. That's the big chunk of the movie. And the alien's annoying as fuck. The guy hates him. The alien's just hyperactive, just reacts immediately, does a lot of stupid stuff. He causes a lot of problems. And gradually, he's getting more and more mad. It's gone from, I'm helping you, to now everybody knows that I'm basically aiding a fugitive. I'm going to lose my job. I might go to jail. I might get shot. Who knows what's going to happen? And he's not liking this at all. And through some conflicts to their road trip, it's kind of like a buddy movie, he starts to see the alien as a kid. He realizes that he doesn't know how old the alien is in alien years, and starts to get this feeling that the guy is awkward and frustrating, but he's sincere and kind. He makes bad choices, but he's a good person. Good alien thingy. And he starts to notice that he feels that this is someone worth protecting. As it goes on, he starts sticking out his neck more. He goes from regretting this work to, being proud of it. Something that he's invested. He wants to see this guy get home safely. As he's doing this and there's going along, he starts to, see his dream. He sees himself as actually protecting this alien from a life or death situation, and he's proud of it. This is kind of what he wanted to be, and he's getting to experience it. Then they go along and they make it to the city. For plot reasons, it's the giant city of San Francisco. And when he's there, it's full of danger that definitely he could fix and definitely needs someone to save him. And he has that moment like, great, this is what I've been looking for. If this goes well, I can send the alien back. I can do a great job. And then I can stay here. This is where I've been wanting to go. And I can protect these people too. And while he's there, he starts to notice it's kind of a mess. There's a lot of danger that needs him, but it's a pretty unpleasant, angry, there's a lot of ugliness, garbage, trash. The people aren't happy. They're not nice to each other. And for the first time in a very long time, he starts to miss his hometown. A town he already liked, but he's never felt longing for it before. The plot continues on. The villain who's chasing the alien shows up in the big city. There's a big fight. It's a stalemate. Eventually, the villain figures out the best way to solve all this isn't to attack them in this big city, but to attack the man's hometown. So he goes back there. The alien chooses to go with them. So the policeman, he goes, I'm going to go back to my hometown to defend it. I have to. They're only in danger because of me. And the alien goes, okay, I'll help you. And by this time, they're kind of friends. He's gone from, being called the Donut Lord to being annoying to okay, whatever. We'll just go along with it. They get back to the hometown, and both of them look at it with new eyes. The policeman, he looks at it, and it's not just a quiet place anymore. It's not just a boring place. It's the place where everyone that loves me is. It's where everyone I love is at. It's a place that I want to protect. And the villain is just destroying it, just bombs and just like lasers and everything to try to like get this guy to come out because he thinks that's a fast way to get it, and it's making him mad. He does what he can do. He does what he first does. He chases him down. It's pretty good at what he does. He jumps in, cracks open the guy's like tank, because it's made of like the ceiling's made of glass, and he just starts wailing on him, just bam, 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 and he's just beating the crap out of him. And he's just full of like, this is a place I have to protect. And he realized that his job in this place matters. It's not just, saving lives, but because these people matter so much to him, making sure that nothing like this ever happens to these people matters a lot. And then he looks at the alien who gave him this silly nickname, and he thinks, this alien is now part of my home. He needs my protection too. And this silly nickname feels like an honor to him now. He's always been capable of this. He knew he was capable of this. He just never needed to be capable of it. And the villain is the only one in this small town surprised that he's capable of this. So when he's just getting slaughtered by this policeman, the villain turns around and goes, "Who the hell are you?" And the only time they swear in this children's movie, he says, "I'm the Donut Lord, motherfucker."
Well done. Definitely felt a lot more polished and engaging than the first time. So, what do you feel like was your biggest change from the first to the second iteration?
Yeah, so having any concept of start, middle, and end was a big thing. To do that is why I'd like to come back to it again. It cracks up on a lot of other questions, even without even going deeper in that simple concept. One, I got this much deeper feel for what the themes of the story actually is. Like what really matters. And in part of that, I split off, instead of having like, here's how the alien story and the cop story interweave, and just said, we're just going to focus on the policeman. And in that, I had two themes, like his job and his relationship with the alien. And I realized that like the job's actually two things. Like it's the way he feels about his home and the way he feels about the job. Those are two separate things. So that kind of cracked into two separate things that each deserve their own attention. So then it was a total of job, home, and relationship with the alien.
That makes perfect sense, especially with your story this time around. It definitely felt like you were talking more about just his hometown in the middle of it and how he felt returning to it than you did on the first one. I would like to see you expand upon that even a little bit more when you're talking about when he goes to, was it San Francisco?
Mm-hmm.
And say that it doesn't feel like home to him. It doesn't have the same emotional connection. It's not what he was hoping for. Just tying that, I would almost say make it feel like the middle has its own end, so that way it's in cohesive chunks. The intro is setting everything up. He goes to San Francisco, and the moral, if you cut the story off there, is it wasn't all that he was expecting it to be. Don't meet your heroes type thing. And then there's the end, where it's the redemption arc where he comes back to his hometown. That would
So
be
each
how
one
I
has
would
its own start, middle, end, start, middle, end, start, middle, end.
That would be how I would structure it.
Interesting. That's definitely one of those cards in that storyteller deck we had that we talked about on the benches at Bringles. That's a great idea.
I will also say that I've been listening to an audiobook of 1,000 Nights and a Night, which don't recommend. honestly. But the whole idea is it tells a story in the first chapter, and it sets up for, okay, this woman's going to be killed by this king. He's been killing a woman every single day, so
Mm.
every night she tells him the first half of a story, and then finishes it on the next one and tells a little bit of the next story and keeps them going. And so it's 1,000 stories, all of her just telling a story to the king to keep him invested.
Mm.
So it's making me look at everything of, okay, I can do the same thing with my writing, keep people invested. So I can tell one story and then just lead in a little bit to the next one and it keeps them invested, tell a second story into the next one, and just keep that building almost like chain links around each other.
Mm. So everything can have its complete meaningful arc and have a bit of a cliffhanger that leads into the next part.
That's what I'm getting from this book, yes.
I like it.
The other thing I would do is have something to where it feels like it came full circle.
Mm.
So I think I mentioned this the first time to you, even
Hmm.
of don't start off with just, I'm going to tell you a story. I used that already, I'm sorry. But say, I'm going to tell you the story about the motherfucking Donut Lord.
Hmm.
And do that dramatic pause, say it slowly, and then start giving the fast details of the intro. And don't even address Donut Lord. Don't touch it. Do not say it again until the very end.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that. The the transformation of how he feels about that term was something that I really liked in the original version, at least what I was trying to get at. And when I cut out the
So
story arc
even
for the
play on
alien,
that.
I feel like I feel like it gets hollow without talking about the alien's arc as well. And I don't know if there's enough time to like throw that extra thread in.
So what I would have done then is say at the very beginning, let me tell you about this police officer, the Donut Lord,
Hmm.
who always ate donuts, and make it seem like it has a negative connotation, like he assumes it does in the beginning of the movie. And then get to know this alien a little bit, his transformation of realizing it and then leading into it, so that way you're taking on that same journey the officer is.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Make that more core because that's kind of the core thing I'm trying to get at. The other question I had for you was I wanted to make this about a story, but also find a way to include like how do I at the end explain what we've learned from the story about storytelling, and the transformation of that name is really what I'm getting at. And yeah, I kind of got
So
away
yeah,
from
then
that.
I would focus right away on the negative connotation, make that be the grounding impact
Mm.
moment.
Hook should be name is bad hammer home.
Don't even make it too obvious though, but just be like, yeah, he's the Donut Lord. Of course, the cop is a Donut Lord.
Mm.
Picture Paul Blart. Just lean into making it bad, but don't hint that it's going to come full circle and be good. Leave
Mm.
that as the. That's what I would do with it.
Gotcha.
Everything's easier hindsight, though.
Now, that's why I appreciate you listening and give me some feedback on this.
Of course. Is there any parts specifically you want me to focus on or anything for advice?
I guess I wanted to ask. So what I ended up doing, which ended up being a bit more work and might have been out of the scope of what we were trying to do, is start, middle, end. But when I broke it into three threads, then I had a start of that thread, start of that thread, and start of that thread, and then a middle of that thread, and middle of that thread, and middle of that thread, and then end of those threads. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Um, Again, think of it like chain links in my mind of you want it to feel cohesive in each part. Um, so even when I was writing for like Shackleton is a good one. When I'm writing one part of it of, okay, here's this new issue that came up. Here's what was going on during it, what they were doing. Here's how that ended. And then here's the next issue, because there's a lot of issues in that one. And it
Hmm.
was just continually building one piece at a time of something happens, which is probably bad in that case. Here's their reaction to it. Here's the ending of it. And then it leads into another bad thing, and that's going to be the next paragraph.
This start, middle, end concept is way bigger than I appreciated. I just
It's
knew it's something I was bad at and just wanted to practice.
it's very confusing to explain to someone, but in my mind, I want to break down every chunk of a story into cohesive bits to
Hmm.
where if I really had to, I could break it into 3 minute clips the whole podcast, 5 minute clips even.
Yeah, I really like this. I feel like just working on this tactic, we could get a lot of mileage. I'd be tempted to, maybe do like a part or second revision of this, or try doing a different story just with this start, middle, end, because there's so many dimensions and parts to it that, you have a lot of good ideas on. It kind of would be fun to work on that some more too.
Thinking about it now, talking about out loud, I think that breaking it into sections that have a beginning, middle, and end are also going to be beneficial to both of us just because if we're trying to do content like YouTube shorts, little trailers, things like that, being able to already have it broken up and not needing to rewrite or anything, just cutting a clip and here you go, this will work for it now.
That is brilliant. I've been wondering about that. When you cut into small parts, they say it's great. We're like, well, that's just a third of a story. Like, nope, each one of those is a story.
It's
You just
its
have three
own,
stories connecting to a bigger one.
yep, that that's something I didn't realize beforehand until we were talking about it out loud, and I'm definitely going to be stealing that,
Ah,
using it.
dude, I love it. I
So
want to ask you
now
one
I
last
had,
thing.
okay,
Go ahead. You first.
I was going to move on to the next part, so
Okay. Uh, this is a little bit like unique, not unique, but there's telling the story well, which is something I want to get out of this. But to be able to teach something about storytelling through the story, do you have any thoughts on that? Because it feels like at the ideal, I would still tell a story with a good hook and then an impactful end, and then I'd have to have this rambling end where we talked about what we learned from it.
uh
Kind of like an epilogue. Like, so you see how that felt, and it felt that way strongly because of this and that. Did you notice those throughout the, you know?
I think that if you have a good enough story, you don't need to second guess that you're having that emotional impact. I
If it's a
think
good
for our
story.
purposes, it makes sense to go back and forth talking about what we want. But once you have that story down, I think you'd be able to deliver it in front of an audience and they would have that impact and they would come to you and be like, wow, this really showed me something about it.
But you think they would understand what made that story good? Because that's what I run into. The better story is, the less I notice anything. So it feels like at the end you'd have to have an explanation of like, okay, the element that we've learned from this story is doing this.
Uh, I
That kind
don't
of
think
deflates
they
it after
would
the end.
necessarily notice it unless they were looking for what made this good. And I think that's honestly the best thing you can do is not have them find out why it's so good. That will get them more invested and wanting to pay more attention to you. If they ask
True.
you, you can absolutely teach them. If they're not interested, don't teach them, they'll keep watching, trying to figure out what it is in the back of their head without even realizing it.
That's true for telling stories and having viewership. I want to find a way that I can teach storytelling through stories where it's not like we had a good time, but like, oh, yes, next time I should do this tactic. That worked great. Thank you for showing me.
I think that's just something people need to be invested in themselves. If someone's not invested in wanting to learn, I'm not going to spend the time trying to teach them something.
True.
That's a shortcoming of mine.
I do not disagree with it all. Okay, you gave me a lot to digest, and definitely wanted to have some time for Ryan's.
So, a few times ago, I asked you what your favorite art style was. Do you remember that?
Baroque.
That's right. So, first thing I want to do is I've got a short list written down of things that I noticed and seem to be agreed upon from what I read online is common characteristics in Baroque art style. And I want to
Hmm.
make sure you agree with these and if there's anything else you would add to it.
Sure.
So, typical characteristics that I noticed were the use of color and almost like an idea of grandeur really was used to emphasize a dramatic, or it was emphasized to add a more dramatic feeling to it,
Mm.
especially with the use of lighting and shading. The
Mm.
backgrounds are always very dark and it almost looks like a stage light's on the main center point.
You're just describing my first discussion of this episode.
Uh, yeah, I wanted to circle back to that. The way that it's laid out really emphasizes the feeling, the emotion that they're trying to portray rather than the intellectual, this is what was more likely happening in a moment like this. It's showing you almost like the chaos of what was happening at the time that they're trying to depict.
Say that one more time.
I'm not going to be able to find it, but there was one painting I saw where it was like an execution or something, and it was just the people were just knocked over. The emotion of it was composed to have much more emotion in the
Mm.
audience watching it and watching in horror versus in reality people are probably just like, that's not
Yeah.
cool. Um, you're really when you first look at a piece, it almost feels like you're there watching it unfold rather than just sitting there looking at a picture and going, yeah, that looks nice. It was good brush strokes. You don't
Mm.
notice that. You're noticing the emotion first. And then it always seems like there's more happening just out of frame, but it cuts it off to what's important is focused.
Ooh, that is a good one. Because that
Does
would.
that all sound right to you?
Oh yeah. This is the first I've considered that thing about cutting off frame, which I wouldn't even understood in my university courses back then. But with what we've learned now, that makes you feel like it's a real thing. It's a world that extends, not a photo, and it makes it feel more like one, you're a
There's
part of it,
other
but also it's
things
an actual world.
going on just out of frame, but this is what we're focusing on.
Yeah, that completely. Yeah, you're nailing it, nailing it.
So, that being said, I was going to first tie this into writing, but first I want to tie it into film and hearing all these things now and listening to what you said at the beginning. I think you know where I'm going with this.
This reminds me when I was talking about the stock footage compilation I put together and going through my old stuff again taught me so much. It's like, oh, having you look at this and make me think about Broke for the first time that I've had to since college. Wow, seeing a lot of connections I did not notice before, but were fucking
It's
staring me in
almost
the
like
face.
you tend to like something for a reason,
There's
and
these. Mm.
you're seeing connections to the other things you like because you like them for the same reasons.
There's these core things inside us that express ourselves and spider out into like 1,000 different things you're doing with your life, which is why I think it's important to, meditate, or, if you're doing like psychedelic therapy or whatever, just periodically, like, I'm doing these actions, but here's the seed that I'm wanting out of it. That's very veered away from the reason that I want it for. And this other thing actually connects to the thing that I want to be, that I'm my seed again, and keeps true to that a lot better. Everything. So the 3D movies, like, you feel like you're connected to a real world. The super darkness with the television and the camera. I bought this bloody thing, which is embarrassing how much I spent on it. And the very first person who saw me with it, the very first thing they said, "Oh, nice. How many megapixels is that?" And I'm like, fuck, like less than your phone. All of this is to
They're asking
have
the wrong question.
it's all of this is to have my seed, to have the best camera in the world at dark colors and motion. I don't care how good it is at making photos. I want motion. I want video. I want darkness and light. And I want that Baroque life in my hands.
Aesthetic feeling, yes.
Yes.
So now, how can you take those same concepts and put them into your writing?
I feel like when you put it this way, the darkness, which is so powerful, that's the pauses. That was item number 5 on that guy's list of things to hit. And it's something that I'm not a natural at. And whenever he would demonstrate it, like, wow, that is cool. You saw I tried to add some of that in today.
You did. It was well done.
What else could feel like motion and darkness? For storytelling, maybe tone would have to have that. Like, I'm wrapped up in right now, that's the concept that that guy was taught, just having more contrast and huger range in every dimension of what you're doing, which, I mean, I'm saying it out loud. I'm like, that's everything that Baroque stands for. Just the bigger you can make the range on everything.
So, would your word choices, the vocabulary on one part where you're talking slower, would you like to use more extravagant, bigger, eloquent wording versus parts where you're talking quicker? Do you want to just use small, quick words that you don't need to think about as much?
Vocabulary choice. You could go like very surface level and very descriptive, even if they were the same length. You could go very short versus very long. There's a lot of contrast you could get with your word choice, which I don't know if I have any brain space left to do while I'm on the fly, but these are great ideas.
It's something I'm going to play around with because I haven't done that before. Of, okay, this is a main person, I'm going to describe him with a little more profound word choices versus this is a background character, his shirt was yellow.
I would be interested to see if you could pick at least one item or 2 lines where you describe one thing, where you describe 2 things with an equal amount of words, equal amount of syllables, but have one very undescriptive, unemotional, and the other one with the same amount of brevity, very descriptive. So it kind of feels like you're going from accelerating emotion, accelerating feeling, accelerating intensity and value and attention.
Okay, I will. I might do that rather than working on my own story for next time because that sounds more interesting, to be honest.
Mm, I
Uh,
like this a lot.
and then how
Also
would
makes
you make it to where it feels like there's more of a world outside of what your frame is in your writing, but you're just showing a glimpse of it. You're not showing all of it.
I think you could do that, especially with writing, by having more minor tertiary characters. With movies, they have this crap thing where if anyone speaks a single word, they have to be part of a guild, which is a union and all these other bureaucratic old nonsense things. But you could have the concept of people randomly popping and popping out for like 3 words, 10 words, 15 words, half a syllable, and there's no cost to that. And it feels like, well, they're just part of a living, breathing world. There's got to be more ways to do that, but that seems like one of the harder challenges to make because nothing exists in your eye on your eye without spending time on it. With a photo, you can have so much going on, so it's kind of like the feeling of things spilling off the plate. It's overwhelming. It's more than you can process. It doesn't cost me any more time. I'm ignoring it, but it's there. But when you're saying it with words, you can't have it in my head without taking my time and my attention.
So one of the things I'm also going to try and do for next time is I'm going to try and find a few examples of like poetry or books, short stories, something from the time period where Baroque was the contemporary art style and see what their word choices are, what literary devices they use, and see how that could connect to these choices.
Well, I know some of these from the operas we studied from that period, and there's like a glimpse in my mind, and I know there's 99% left to learn, and I'm so excited that you're actually asking this question. God, I wish I had been doing this like years ago. This is brilliant.
I thought you would enjoy this idea.
You demonic monster. This I'm
I've been sitting on
speechless.
it for a while.
Thank you for this. This
Of course.
is excellent. I will have to just leave that for our finale, our conclusion. There's nothing more for me to say.
I'm glad I could leave you speechless.
Running out of battery and out of time. Let's wrap this up and we can make plans for next time.
Sounds good. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I will have a glass next time.